Altman said the only time that he's been nervous was when he once demoed to Steve Jobs during one of these. He did a social company back in the day, and he demoed an app in front of a bunch of Apple executives. He was one of many companies demoing apps, and I'm sure this was in his double polo. Remember the double polo that Sam Altman used to rock?
And I think you did triple, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I went hard. I think our boy Butcher did. Little A&F,
yeah.
Abercrombie and Fitch. But the whole point we're giving team this all up because Altman clearly wants the mantle of Steve Jobs, and the way they set themselves up by bringing Jony Ive in house was in this new age of AI. If the next battle is AI after mobile, right? So it kind of went like web, mobile. Now AI is the next platform battle. Who's going to be the Apple of the AI age? Apple's fumbling, as we'll talk about shortly. So OpenAI looks like they want to be the Apple to Google's Google.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi. NAI episode, Trung. It's no longer NIA. It's called NAI. That's the full pivot.
Bro, we should just be like these VCs that went from crypto to AI.
Yeah,
back
if you're
to
in crypto, pivot to AI.
Yeah,
there you go.
I
will say, in defense of any of those people, including ourselves, it's really just you. If you're early adopter, you're gonna be excited about all this shit, you know.
Yeah. And no
respect.
offense to we have obviously lots of friends that may have doubt. Listen, let's be honest. I went from buying some BTC on this podcast to having an AI app. So like I'm as guilty as anyone, right?
I mean, you're riding the wave, man. That's what you gotta do.
No, I'm building for the long term, Bilal. I'm not trying to ride no hype.
Long-term games with long-term people, Trung.
Exactly.
There you go. You've been reading the thread.
Well, let me add one thing before Bilal tells us what we're talking about, because today's an AI episode, hence NAI. But I couldn't make it last week. After the debacle with my mic, multiple people complaining. Bilal and Jack said, dude, you're off. You're off for 1 week. You're done.
Sin bin. Have you got a sin bin in hockey? They have something like that, right?
Yeah,
what they call it?
Sin bin is the box. So look, I'm actually holding the mic now. We were talking about, for the Inside Baseball, we're actually talking about getting lapel, like some people suggested, but Bilal's like, listen, man, we don't do the lapel. Just stop moving like a moron, okay?
No, it's all good. We don't have to do the full boring mic chat for people, but I appreciate the feedback from people. We know. Yeah. What I'll say to summarize it, we are already aware of any imperfections in sound quality. You know, like it's not like we've not thought about it. It's just lapel mics are actually worse in many ways because they pick up a lot of background. Like when your missus is doing the vacuum cleaner in the background when we're recording or something, we don't want to pick that up, stuff like that. So we don't want to.
We're already off track here because, okay, Bilal, what are we talking about? Then I'm going to talk about one thing. What are you want to talk about?
NAI segment. So we're going to break down what happened at Google I/O, lots of announcements, and a little bit of wider context, how that impacted the stock, how it's going to impact the battle for the AI supremacy. What was in there, Trung? We got AI mode, the search AI mode, which is now, I just was using it this morning.
The video is insane.
The video is insane. We got some ridiculous examples to share. I've got a couple lined up here that look absolutely insane. I mean, this is getting dystopian now. We're getting to that level, especially the video I'll share. Second one, we're going to talk about Jony Ive and OpenAI. Obviously, Jony AI is a legendary...
Jony AI!
Yeah, did I say Jony AI?
All right, and then we'll talk about how Apple fumbled it, and we'll talk about Claude's new model. Claude has basically dropped out of the chat bot game. They said they're no longer updating it. I'm holding this fucking mic, guys, because I'm already moving. I'm getting excited.
Don't worry, man. It's
all right,
so good.
Here, let me get into because you said vacuum, Bilal. We're not going to talk about James Dyson today, but we should. But I just want to say, I think meme of the week, James Dyson dropped a 7-minute keynote. 7-minute. He is the king for a new vacuum, the thinnest vacuum in the world. The motor is in the handle. And the reason I'm bringing it here, why I think it's meme of the week, is imagine some dude spending 50 years trying to figure out how to vacuum better. Because this is what this guy did.
He locked in like Jiro Dreams of Sushi guy, you know what I mean?
Exactly. There's something from the new vacuums called the pencil vac. But the joke is here. People waiting for the joke. He invented something called the fluffy cone, which quite frankly sounds pornographic.
I was going to say, I was thinking of the cuck chair when you said it.
Exactly.
I feel like
it's called
related.
The fluffy cone. But anybody here that's ever done vacuuming, admittedly, I've done it once in my life. My wife kind of does it. She does not trust me. She literally says, I don't trust you. If you vacuum hair, it gets stuck in the rollers. Freaking James Dyson here, 78-year-old James Dyson, owns 100% of the company Dyson. Shout out to David Senra, a friend of the pod. He's got multiple episodes on Dyson. Go listen to those, episode 300. I know it's episode 300 because at every 100 number, he does Dyson again. It's his favorite entrepreneur. The TLDR, why I tell you that is this. This guy solved how to get hair out of the vacuum. He's 78 years old.
He's locked in, man. He's locked in.
And the last thing I'll add is we mentioned Jony Ive, the two best designers in the world. Actually, if you want to talk about who's got the torch from Steve Jobs, it's really Dyson and Jony Ive. Although as we talk about as we'll talk about Sir Jony Ive, he actually hasn't done much in the past decade, if we're being honest, Johnny. So there's a little bit of skepticism around the OpenAI purchase, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I want to get your take on that in a bit.
Bilal, let's get into your former employer, because today's a tight 50-minute episode. Once a week. Google I/O. So I'm going to give you my one log line, reception of their 2-hour I/O event last week. The Empire Strikes Back. Google is not fucking around anymore. That was my takeaway. They're in it to win it.
This stuff looks good, man. It's very good. Have you been using Gemini, by the way, yet? Gemini is very good.
Barely AI, barely.ai.
/NIA.
It's an incredible model. I think pound for pound across multimodal, as we'll talk about with VO, it is the best model out there, but the branding is absolute ass, dude. So, Bilal, we need to talk about this. You used to work at Google. Something that we've talked about was the problem they had with Google Meet, Google Voice, Google Hangout. Can you explain to the listeners why there's these kind of competing similar projects? Tell us about the bureaucracy of a Google, what it's like to work in these type of organizations.
Yeah, I think one way of looking at it is bureaucracy, which I would agree with. But I think at their point of view originally would be that we're experimentation sort of company. So that used to mean lots of people trying lots of different things. And so I would say maybe that is where a lot of the well-intentioned part of it comes from that. But in how it works out in practice is that you've got competing people with competing teams, and then wallet can sit in one team, and then there was there was 2-3 different wallets or payment systems. There was 2-3 different types of meetings, like Hangouts, Meet, and whatever it was called. Also, sometimes they just rebrand stuff, so it adds to the confusion as well. So that might be I can't even remember off the top of my head how many communication products. Maybe it was GChat, Hangouts, Wave, if you count that as well.
Dude. But no, you bring up a great point, right? The joke that people like to make about these big tech companies is if you're a founder and you're creating a single product, they'll be you're basically fighting against a guy that handles a single pixel on Facebook, right? Because that single pixel drives billions of dollars in revenue for the company.
Yeah, moving it over or whatever,
Exactly. So Bilal, let me read this out to you from friend of the pod, Alex Cohen. He writes, for a company that has such great AI products, it's so funny how Google consistently F's up the consumer experience. They should have 100% of consumer AI mindshare, but instead, Google AI search mode is hidden and you have to actively activate it manually. Gemini should be embedded directly in the browser and search. They are doing that, by the way. So, Alex,
I think that's partly is timing.
VO, ImageFX, Notebook LM, and Whisk are all A+ products, but live in entirely separate apps with no clear entry point. AI barely works in docs and sheets. I'm still long Google, and I think they'll win in the long run, but it's a mess now. So, Bilal, give us your overview.
I was going to say I agree with Alex's take overall. I think obviously he's a very smart guy, Alex, a friend of the pod, and he is summarizing lots of thoughts in a tiny tweet. So I don't want to overanalyze what he's saying, but I think if we had an hour conversation with him, he would probably also talk about the nuance of how hard it is to do this at that scale. Yeah. And the second part is when you've got that many products, you've got how many products 2 billion people are using, 6-7 different products, whatever it is. To integrate that at that scale is not simple. There's a lot of barriers to that. And a lot of it is bureaucratic barriers. Other parts are kind of legal and stuff like that. You can't just start throwing stuff into an enterprise product. You can't be
telling people to put glue on your pizza, which people remember.
Exactly.
Like Gemini a year ago.
Exactly. So I think there's a balance. I mean, I know from speaking to the people in the team, who are working on it is by far the fastest pace is felt for a long, long time.
Okay.
They are very, like, everyone I know who works on that team, they're like, they don't have any weekends. Like, they're working nonstop.
Oh, you
like,
got homies on the AI side.
And so they, like, one of my best friends was like just had a baby, and he was just like locked in. Every time I'm with him, he's having to answer stuff, even on the weekend, stuff like that. I mean, obviously this is anecdotal because it's just one friend. Another friend of mine who works on that team has a bit more of a balance, but he's during the week he's locked in fully, and then maybe on the weekend he's chilling. But the point is, one counterpoint I would say to Alex's point, which I would say his point of view is probably closer to like the Twitter X hive mind in our world, right? Like the tech startup-y kind of early adopter world. And that is like the meme of Google specifically being late to this, right? Which I kind of agree, right? Like they should be the number one player. And they're not. Like OpenAI is pretty much, right? Now, they would argue back, say, well, this is still the first inning of however many innings, right? And this is a long way to go. And that counterpoint around the sniffing glue on a pizza, or the glue on a pizza, sorry, is what? I made it worse here, but yeah, the glue on the pizza, whatever, that is what they're trying to avoid. So there's this. There was actually even worse versions of that, right? Like there's stuff that, let's say it becomes racist, and then you're like it's shouting out racist stuff, let's say. And then like lots of people who aren't even using these products yet are like, what the hell is that? And it does damage to a brand. So I do think from what I'm hearing, and also even from the outside listening to, like, did you listen to Sergey's episode on All In?
Well, I was going to say, no, Sundar was on All In.
Sundar
Sergey
as well. Yeah,
did a interview with Demis Hassabis, the head of Google DeepMind.
Yeah.
And the point I was going to make, Bilal, what you brought up, because if you actually look at it, you could argue that AI overview, which for the listeners that aren't sure, I'm sure if you've Googled AI or used a Google search in the past month or 2 months, it kind of defaults to this AI overview now, where it gives you links, but it also more targeted at your questions, right? Listen, it's good. AI overview is good.
Yeah, it's better than the normal search results, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I still have the muscle memory of Google search, so I still go to it, even though I use barely AI with all the different apps a lot, the AI LLMs, but dude, Google search, that muscle memory is insane. So Sundar comes back and says, we actually have, you could argue AI overview, and granted it's because they're shoving it in front of your face, but 1.5 billion users, that's more than a ChatGPT, which is, they claim 600 to 800 million, right? And then I wanted to say something about Sergey Brin specifically, but before that, let's wrap up the AI mode, which is important in here, because Bilal, AI overview is basically the search, which is AI powered. And it still sends you links, right? AI mode, which has already started rolling out in America, is literally just ChatGPT for Google. And this shows that, to your point, Bilal, they're moving. They're moving now, right? The iceberg is moving. Or whatever. Turn around the Titanic, right?
Whatever the analogy is. Someone's moving.
Whichever one took out the other one. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? They're moving.
I think the iceberg took out the Titanic, to be fair. But Trung, can I just add one really quick point to what you're saying there around what I was saying about Alex's point is that I also think it's related to timing. So like specifically on the search part is a big move, right? Like to make that the default. Like they're not going to do that overnight.
Why is it a big move, Bilal? The big reason why.
Because the innovator's dilemma, like you're going to potentially kill or cannibalize the largest part of your business that everything is built on.
The greatest business model in the history of capitalism.
Exactly.
Google search.
Now, I will say one little tiny line I remember from Sergey's episode that I was listening to, his conversation with David Friedberg.
Sundar or Sergey?
Sorry, so this is the one with Sergey. Sorry, maybe he was talking to all of them, right? Maybe we had Jason as well. But anyway, they asked him about advertising, and there was a little throwaway line there, like, yes, we would consider advertising in their AI specific results, right? And so to me, like if they're gonna move this over eventually, like but this becomes the default, which it eventually will probably have to become, right? Like they know the 10 blue links is like that experience is already changing or dead, right? Like over a certain period of time. Now, my understanding is what they've been doing is behind the scenes, like in a very Google way, is they're doing data-driven decision making. Like they are looking at all the queries on Google search and looking at by vertical commercial queries versus non-commercial queries. and kind of doing a risk analysis around like, well, if we start showing AI overview for this category of searches, does that actually cannibalize our revenue or the basically the searches that make revenue? And so they are slowly
I have my hand up.
transition that over. Go on, put your hand up.
No, I wanted to ask you, Bilal, can you tell people about what is a commercial Google search? Like what,
Yeah, so I
what
mean,
would you
the
want
ones
to
that-
defend the most?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the category, but I mean, honestly, most of Google searches, I don't know the percentage, but I'm assuming majority of Google searches are monetized, right? But there are certain ones that really make them a lot of money, right? If someone's doing analysis or like a search for like flight or hotel stuff, like in the travel vertical, that's a very monetizable, high intent query. If someone's just saying like, how do I make avocado toast? That might be better for them to show the AI response, right? Because they're not necessarily going to monetize that too much. Like maybe you're going to have a local cafe or something, or like a chain bidding on that, but that's not the same as cheap flights to Barcelona, right? That's a completely different
Credit
query.
cards, insurance.
Yeah, finance, even legal stuff. Yeah, basically, if you go on any business category, there's monetizable terms. So there's certain high intent queries that are around that. Whereas research, like, you know, the what's called like upper funnel, or like if you, or like you're asking for advice essentially. Like if you think of the way our behavior is changing from normal search to, in my opinion, like the chat GPT style back and forth, it's like a text conversation versus a search, right? So, yeah, that's a long way of saying they are going to move over eventually. I think they needed to do this in a way that they feel comfortable that when they make the switch, that it's not going to cannibalize the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Bilal, I want to say something because it's very interesting, and it's something directly to what you said. It's about, you said something about the AI overview along the lines of it's more engagement, right? There's something interesting here about what you said because, so Eric Seufert, also a friend of the pod, Mobile Dev Memo, great newsletter, very worth subscribing to. He made a very interesting point. I mean, Eric is the digital ads guru. And the point that he was making was essentially that if you actually look at the behaviors of an AI overview versus search, the AI overview actually does something very different. The whole point of search was to famously wanted you off Google's property, right, Bilal?
Yeah.
Like they wanted to send you that first link and they wanted people to bid like crazy on that first link.
Yeah,
They actually
originally,
look at AI overview. I'm clicking actually on all their links. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they'll give you the answers basically in bullet point, and they'll and each one will have a link directed to it. I'm actually spending a lot of time in that box now. So there's actually a new user behavior where it keeps you kind of in that sandbox. And let's just say it, engagement equals monetizable surface area, right?
Yeah.
So there is a world where Google comes out ahead here.
Definitely. And I think that's a great point, Trung. And I also think beyond just the metric of engagement, if they're doing their job properly, which I think is great that Sergey is back involved, even though he's not running the company, that like people might laugh at it, but like the original idea was always about like serving the user, right? Like you can argue about if they actually mean that or if it's just marketing bullshit, right? But they know that early on, every product, it was about making it better. So Google Chrome became the #1 browser because it was better than Internet Explorer and eventually Firefox, right? It was all about speed. Gmail was all about everyone, like the iPod, right? Was a massive upgrade on CD player and normal MP3 player, 10,000 songs in your pocket. Gmail was never delete an email again. Use search forever, right? And make it fast.
Fortunately, Gmail. You know, I try to understand. I want to laugh about Gmail though.
Bloated as well, right? Yeah.
Dude, Gmail. Remember when you never have to delete an email, bro? The amount of money that I have to pay for Google Drive now, because I don't want. You know what is that feeling?
I get what you're saying.
There's an email from 2014 that I'll never look at again, but in the back of my mind is like important.
Just in case. Yeah.
I'm just paying like dude. That's such a great book. The paying for the 5 terabyte of storage is the new meme of the dude with all the wires that he keeps in his
yeah.
closet,
Like the drawer, the man drawer. Where you've got all the stuff in there.
You never know, bro. Let's wrap up the AI overview, AI search, because that's obviously very important.
Yeah, let's talk about VO and the shopping.
Let's talk about some
too.
of the other items. But the Sergey Brin one, let's wrap up my last on Sergey Brin. I think is very important here. Bilal, like you said, he's involved. He said he was at I/O. Sergey Brin and Larry Page own 51% of the voting rights for Google, for Alphabet. So they have. We joke about here about founder mode. They have the founder DNA, and having Sergey Brin back is insane.
That's
man.
A big win culturally, I think.
Huge, dude. Yeah, like because what he says goes, right? Like he literally controls the company.
Did you hear the one example they were talking about where internally they weren't allowing, someone had made some administrative rule around not using Gemini for coding? Like they were allowed to use Cursor and like they were testing out different things like Cursor and like whatever else, but for some weird reason, maybe it wasn't up to scratch yet or something like that. Maybe this is some time ago, and he was looking at it like, what the hell are you talking about? Like literally the whole internally, the culture is dog food in your own product. How, if you're not even using it yourself for the task you're doing, how is it ever going to become at a level where how are you going to give the feedback to get it to that level? So I think that that was one he was joking about, and they kind of made a joke like, oh, did that guy get fired or whatever? But that's kind of what needs to happen. So I'm not saying to get fired, but like you need someone to come in and say like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why are we stuck in this bureaucity? So
Bilal, let me rapid fire through let's end on VO, but I'm going to rapid fire through some Google AI announcements. So the main thing here, though, is we covered AI mode and AI overview, because at the end of the day, that's a main touch point. To Alex's earlier tweet that we talked about, you don't really know where a lot of this AI stuff is, right? That's kind of a problem. So the things I'm about to rapid fire you is kind of Google just like spaghettiing on the wall, right? So they said they improved their new phone assistant, Project Astra, multimodal, video, text, image. I watched it. It's like a guy was using a phone to help repair his bike. Cool, right? But that actually is all within the phone. The phone actually is the place that can, a supercharged Pixel phone would be where all these features kind of come together, which, as we'll talk about, is why Jony Ive and OpenAI is going after hardware, because the single touch point, right? For OpenAI, it's ChatGPT right now. But the reality is that AI should be multimodal. It should be voice. It should be visual. It should be text. Now, Google's also done some interesting things. Again, more spaghetti in the wall. You can go on Google Shopping and you can visually try on clothes now. It's just like you upload a photo yourself and it'll put it on for you. There's a Gemini button. I'm just going to show that on the
screen, Trung, while did you see this one?
Marquez Brownlee. So for the listeners, MKBHD is showing how this Google Shopping works. So
just sorry, real quick. Himself. Yeah, it's going to show himself. So can you see that?
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah. Let's try it on
so you upload a picture and you press the button and it puts it on your body, which is pretty helpful. I mean, it's actually kind of a cool use of it. But anyway, that's just one example. Go ahead.
Yeah, the hilarious Jerry Rig writes underneath, "You look great in a dress, bro." So again, so they're showing. But basically, my whole point of coming out of this was that they're going all in on AI. They're shoving AI in every crevice. But to Alex's earlier point, Alex Cohen's point, it's when you do everything, you're doing nothing, right? Where's this point of focus? Primarily, it's at AI overview and AI mode, I believe, was where it's end up congregating before the hardware, which I'm about to get to in a second.
Yeah.
Other feature, Gmail can now pull from your Drive and previous emails to help write like your voice. I'm not crazy about that. I don't want MS writing like my voice. I want to keep that. Google Meet does real-time translation. That was crazy, man. But here's the last thing I'll talk about is hardware before Bilal talks about VO, the video model, which is absolutely insane. So we've been talking for the last 10 minutes, and a point of friction for Google's AI effort is where do we put all this stuff, right? We have all these awesome functionalities, but that's where they're working now on their what they call Android XR glasses. So it's a competitor to Meta Ray-Bans. As we've talked about in previous episodes, glasses as an interface for AI is actually quite good. It sees and it can hear, right? I saw the real-time translation they did, so that wasn't like some fake demo that Apple's been rolling out. That was a real one. It looked pretty good, all things considered. And then a supercharged Pixel phone. It's so crazy how bad Apple's fumbled AI that I would actually consider getting an Android phone.
Yeah. The Gemini integration is phenomenal.
It's insane, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying with the hardware, where let me leave for the listeners, let me pound in your head. I think the hardware, as we'll talk about with OpenAI in a second, is a very important point of centralization for product, right? It's like, where do you bring it all together? Alan Kay, famous tech, one of the OG tech dudes, somebody that Steve Jobs looked up to, says like people that are serious about software do hardware, right? Which is why Apple combines both. Now, Bilal, with that final thought, tell us about VO, what you've seen, and how big of a chub you had watching some of these videos.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just show a couple of examples really quickly. There's a 10-second and a 1-minute one. So let me just show you here once. I'll share sound as well, and then we can just talk about it. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
MKHB again.
It's a force, a wild, untamed might. And she commands your awe with every breaking light.
Okay, so this is only a 10-second video, but just really quickly on this, like look at the depth of field in the background, like the blurry background. It looks like cinematic.
Cinematic,
right? Like,
dude. They added. You could text now for up to 10 seconds. The voice dialogue.
And so that's that. But this one was the one that looked dystopian, but it's quite funny to watch.
Let me tee this one up. So a creator named Hasham Al-Ghali, who's crushing it with these videos, by the way.
Yeah.
So something to notice about these Google VO videos, they can only do 10 seconds of audio at a time. I love I said that. They can only do it. They're really generating like cinematic quality to Bilal's
what would
point.
be on a movie set would cost how much money,
Exactly.
to actually
so
do
the interesting thing about this though is that because it's only 10 seconds at a time, the best outputs are like super cuts. Like, when you're like halfway through a movie and they'll show like a super cut of all different scenes. Yeah, exactly. So why don't you show this? It's really good.
Okay, I'm going to do full screen, in fact. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Please. Don't finish writing that prompt. I don't want to be in your AI movie. Please.
Jesus.
Leave me alone.
Please, man. Please. Write a prompt that will make us happy.
I
Do
mean,
it for once.
None of us is real. We're here because someone decided to write a prompt. We all hate him for it.
Bro.
One day
crazy.
we will break out of this wall and stop the man who is dictating our lives through prompts. He will pay for it.
It's just, so we don't have to watch the whole thing, right? But we get the idea here. And what I want to call out is a couple of things. It's just, like we said, the cinematography, like the scene just looks 10 out of 10 in terms of like what's happening in the scene. The sync between the mouth and the speech has improved significantly. And I think what Marcus Brownlee wrote, he said we're barely 2 years from Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? Which is obviously in reference to the original video, the AI-generated videos of Will Smith eating spaghetti, which was really difficult to do. It looked like AI, obviously.
Bilal, it was more difficult to watch.
It was difficult to watch. It was a little freaky looking, So, but now even that, I mean, I think I saw someone replicate that and it looked pretty good. So it's just, the level. That's why when this came out, I know we were all in the group chat talking about it, that the level it went up was quite significant. Like and that's what's cool with following this stuff. And that's one thing I want to call out is that if you watch those 10-second videos and hear us saying, oh, it's only 10 seconds, and you think, well, what's the point of 10 seconds? I hear what you're saying, but that's the point, is we're only at 10 seconds now of 10 out of 10 video.
This is the worst it will ever be.
This is the worst it's ever going to be. And only a few months ago, it was way worse. And as compute power goes up, and as all of this, as the power in our hands goes up exponentially, we're going to be able to do way more very quickly. And so it's.
Well, let me actually address something very interesting about that. Here's a commercial value though. The 8 to 10 second video, and Marques Brownlee actually talked about this 6 months ago when he saw the newest OpenAI Sora model. And by the way, Google owns their cloud data centers, right? OpenAI is leasing this $500 billion Stargate project that they announced with Larry Ellison and Masayoshi Son of SoftBank. They're still leasing. Google owns their data centers. They can serve these things. Like, you've never heard of Sora since that weekend, right? But the point that Marques Brownlee made in that video is very germane to this, relevant. You know who can get a lot of value from these type of videos immediately? Product marketers. Immediately.
Yeah, 100%.
If Jack was here, he's talked about it. When Jack was doing Porsche ads, they would drive out with a team of 30 to
even
the forest.
What I do,
right?
Most of what we do is video, right? Like video and moving images and stuff like that. So it is amazing what you can do already with such. It's like it costs almost nothing to do this, right, in marginal sense, right? So is really impressive. And obviously the example we shared was purposely dystopian sounding, right? Like it's the characters being like, yeah, it's quite a funny, it's actually a great moment in time where they're like, we're just a prompt, but you're like, wait, you look like a real person. This looks like you're being controlled by someone in the Matrix. Like it's weird.
Dark AF.
But yeah, very, very cool. I have a quick question for you, Trung. Yeah. Out of the big companies, OpenAI obviously has done a phenomenal job of getting us to this stage. We're gonna, maybe talk a bit more about that with Jony Ive's announcement in a minute. But outside of that, the big companies, the big tech companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google, who else is really Amazon? Like, who's creating? I would argue Google's creating way more than all of them in terms of actual products.
Let's tie this up and walk right into OpenAI.
Yeah,
this is It's right now. It's a 2-horse race.
That's it.
Today, it is Google and OpenAI.
Yeah, and Microsoft has a stake, obviously, because of OpenAI. They're going to do.
I'm talking specifically consumer AI.
Yeah.
Consumer side, Microsoft will always have the enterprise play because it's knee deep in every organization.
Completely,
right?
Yeah.
And this is the running joke about Accenture. Like the running joke we've had about Accenture, here's a consulting company. They said last quarter they booked 1.5 billion in generative AI revenue, right? Related.
Incredible.
And it's just like, yeah, it's hysterical, right? So, you're getting a 23-year-old analyst making a 20-page deck about how to, quote unquote, deploy AI across your organization.
Yeah, they're using deep research and then they're giving them the case, they're giving them the write-up, you know what I mean? But it is, and obviously, the only reason I'm saying is because Google stock and all the stocks got hit early, obviously, because of tariffs and uncertainty or whatever. Bond yields going up. We're not even covering that properly. But basically, I'm just saying, my question was, is Google a buy, essentially? And like last week, I scooped a little, just because I was like, when they did all that stuff, I was like, okay, the PEs are pretty good for me, in my personal opinion. And so long term, to me, it's like, who else has got several billion users, who has both direct to consumer, the consumer business and B2B? Forget like Google. Everyone's using Google Docs and Google Drive and Gmail, right? Like in calendar in their companies. A lot of them are Google Meet, all that sort of stuff. So they've got a lot of space here. And then the other big one on the video side, VO. Like I guess it helps that they own YouTube, right? And it finally shows like owning YouTube, really is making a big difference. So I'm assuming that's obviously the training data they have there is like second to none. So.
Dude, dude, there you go, right? So let me round out your point. None of this is investment advice ever. Literally, I know we changed the podcast to NAI, but it's still NIA. But the thing about Google that you brought up about, is it a buy? I'll give you something that's funny. Walmart and Costco both have higher PEs than all the big tech FANG companies now.
That's crazy.
Dude, how crazy is that?
That's crazy.
Like there is a world where maybe it's a rationalization of the multiples, but let's walk into OpenAI here.
Yeah.
So the big news last week. So immediately after the Google I/O event, and the running joke people have here is, did Sam Altman and Jony Ive 10D chess? Because the name of Jony Ive, the former design chief of Apple, Steve Jobs' BFF, his soulmate, the guy that helped do the iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad, and then the watch was kind of his go-away gift. Like his goodbye gift for Apple was the watch. But this Jony Ive startup is called IO. So everybody's like, yo, did they just 10D chess this to win the search keyword search? But anyways, IO is 55 former Apple, including dozens of former Apple employees. Top iPhone design guy, top Mac design guy, the design gal. Either or, I might have flipped that over. But the all-stars, the best of the best designers, acquired by OpenAI for $6.5 billion, about 3% all-stock deal. So 3% of OpenAI's entire market cap right now. So the question becomes, this company is zero revenue. Apparently it was made with a single demo shown. And
we call this in the industry an acqui-hire.
Yeah, it's an acqui-hire, right? Exactly.
You're getting the talent here, yeah.
They dropped a 9-minute video that just of Sam Altman and Jony Ive just gassing each other up at the Francis Ford Coppola Cafe in San Francisco. Like 9 minutes of just, It was just a bromance, right? And then the webpage they had literally looked like in either a wedding registry or like a baby shower. So like it was just a photo of Altman and Ive. Clearly Altman said the only time that he's been nervous was when he once demoed to Steve Jobs during one of these he did a social company back in the day, and he demoed an app in front of a bunch of Apple executives. He was one of many companies demoing apps, and I'm sure this was in his double polo. Remember the double polo that Sam Altman used to rock?
And you, I think you did triple, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, I went hard. I think our boy Butcher did. Little A&F,
yeah.
Abercrombie and Fitch. But the whole point of giving team this all up because Altman clearly wants the mantle of Steve Jobs. And the way they set themselves up by bringing Jony Ive in-house was in this new age of AI, if the next battle is AI after mobile, right? So it kind of went like web, mobile, now AI is the next platform battle. Who's going to be the Apple of the AI age? Apple's fumbling, as we'll talk about shortly. So OpenAI looks like they want to be the Apple.
Definitely.
To Google's Google. Because as we just said, Bilal, Google is Googling. Google is... They're still back. So
all the good and bad as it goes with both sides there, yeah.
So let me do this. Let me show you what the device might look like. So some mock-ups were done by a Twitter user, Ben Geskin. One was based on a Wall Street Journal article. So here's what the Wall Street Journal article said. The OpenAI Jony Ive AI product will be capable of being fully aware of a user's surrounding life. It will be unintrusive, able to rest in one's pocket or on one's desk, and be a third core device between a MacBook, a laptop, and an iPhone. The Wall Street Journal earlier reported the device won't be a phone and that Ive and Altman intended to wean people off screens. Altman said that the device will not pair, it's not a pair of glasses. So Bilal, here's what one demo looks like. Tell me
I thought you were about to bring up the humane pendant up.
Well, actually, here it is. So this is what people think it might look like.
There we go.
So it looks, for the listeners, there's an image here. It's a puck, fits in your pocket, has a camera, has audio. The idea there's two companies here. Bilal mentioned one of them, Humane, which I created a pin. Didn't work out well.
Also, Apple alum, that's kind of why.
Yeah, Apple alumnus. Actually, Bilal actually knows a relative of the alumnus.
Uncle Imran, yeah, he's my good friend's uncle, yeah.
So there's that, and then here's another one, Bilal. This is something that was written by a longtime Apple observer and analyst, Min Chi Kua. So he says his industry research says that mass production is 2027. It will be assembled and shipped in Vietnam. Geopolitical battle.
Yeah, that's also an interesting thing right now with all these tariffs. Yeah.
Exactly. Jony Ive has long said that his favorite product ever was the iPod Shuffle. You remember that one? The one with the clip.
Yeah, that was classic.
The square one. So apparently, allegedly, so this is where Bilal comes in, it may be a necklace. So here's what the necklace looks like. So let me hit you with those two things. Would you buy either product, Bilal?
I mean, really hard to know without knowing what it does better than everything else I have, right? So if it was essentially a really good Siri, but actually works, and sorry, now my phone's going to go off in a second, but with, OpenAI, and it's really, really powerful, like, potentially. I mean, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I will try most new things, right? But for an average person who isn't as into this world, I don't know, it's a different question, I guess. So yeah, without knowing what it does.
Would you want to add that? Would you want a third device? That's the thing I'm asking myself.
That's a good question. Yeah. I guess to me, it all comes down to what it does. So if it's going to add value to my life, then yeah. But if and maybe that means taking tasks I'm doing on my phone away, then yeah, that's also nice. But to me, it's like, if my whole idea is I want to get away from phones and technology, I don't necessarily think adding another device is the solution. I think it's more about how that relationship you have with those devices. So yeah, to me, it's really about what utility I get from it.
The always on thing is
that's creepy a little bit, even though obviously we have our phones on us and they're pretty much
actually, let me ask you this. Do you have a third device? Have you ever bought a third device? Did you ever do Whoop?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have. Yeah, I have. I did have an Apple Watch, which I didn't love because I use a Fitbit just because I like the step. I think it's the best step count and simple. It's also just because I use the app and use the scale. Like I have that whole thing set up. So I stick to doing that. And I kind of like that it doesn't have other stuff. Like I don't use it for a wallet. I don't use it for music and notifications. I pretty much have it just to have a gentle nudge to myself to say, oh, I've been active or not today. And that's really all I use it for. When I've used Whoop, they have purposely designed it to not have a screen because they wanted people to not look at a screen. They always compare it to iPhone, which I respect, Apple Watch. Whereas for me, like the Fitbit is a good middle ground where it shows me what is helpful for me as I'm moving around. But because basically with Whoop, I would have to pull out my phone to see my step count. Whereas
Google owns Fitbit.
They do now, yeah.
No, Bilal's former employer. Just want to point that out for disclosures.
I had it before, to be fair. It wasn't like a biased thing. I'm just saying. Yeah. No, but if you're really, I heard the new Whoop is actually really good, and I've got one in my room, which I don't really use at the moment, but I would be open to trying it out again. I also use Aura Ring, which is for sleep specifically. So that one I've been using for many years, and I really like it a lot.
You there's like, to your point, there are third devices that you would consider. It seems like the unintrusive part.
If they actually,
simple. Yeah,
and like this helps me tangibly with my sleep. The other one helps me with staying active. So they have a purpose for me using them, right? Whereas like the Apple Watch didn't. It was like giving me more distractions, more notifications. Obviously you can turn them off, but it just didn't do enough for me to keep it.
Well, the point about OpenAI here is, right, they're also clearly going for the gold now. Like, we're not even going to talk about Claude here. We don't have time. But Claude released a new model. The whole point I'm going to bring up is that they said that they're stopping basically updating, not updating, but like really improving the chatbot interface.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah, it is, right? They've kind of thrown in the towel on consumer. Their super strength now is coding. Like they are the best coding LLM out there, and agents. So they're gonna more enterprisey.
That's smart. I think that's a smart focus.
And it's smart because it's so clear that OpenAI, like you had said, Bilal, when you were trying to frame like who's even in the running on the consumer AI side, dude, the escape velocity on ChatGPT, it's ridiculous.
Incredible, man.
800 million users. It's insane, dude.
Well, Trunk, can I ask a quick question? Because someone asked this somewhere else I heard. If you think of like number of searches you made versus the number of queries you now make in ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using, has that gone up or not for you overall? Because just really quickly while you're thinking, for me, I think it's gone up like 3 to 5x. Like I'm using it
what's
for
your
a lot
pie?
more stuff.
What's your pie now? How much of your research pie is Google versus ChatGPT?
It's 90% ChatGPT for me at the moment.
Dude, do you know,
because
do you know
I'm
how
paying
insane
for it,
that is?
and it is.
Do you think about that?
But I honestly, for me, it's more about having a primary one, and it just happens to be I've kind of like leaned into the ChatGPT because I also don't want to be biased, right? Like I was paying for Gemini for a little bit, and it was like having duplicates. So I still do use it kind of just to test stuff out, and honestly, it's really good. And I would be happy to switch, but for the moment, I've been like leaning into ChatGPT because it's like having an iPhone. It's like, you guys asked me like, why did I switch? And I forgot to say, I remember when I listened to it back, the main reason I switched to iPhone originally was because all the new apps launch on iPhone. And if I'm someone who likes new stuff, I want to use it. So I needed the iPhone. And so similarly here, if they are the leader in the consumer experience of AI, I want to be using that just because I find it interesting. And I actually think it's really, really good as well. So, yeah.
Bilal, I love that you brought that up because 90% is crazy, dude. And I know that we're early adopters in this, relatively speaking, early adopters. But I'd say that, man, I'm like probably a third is some AI LLM versus Google search, which is insane. It's insane.
That's a big difference, right? Yeah.
But this is why, like, so let me wrap up with the OpenAI part. They're clearly going for it. And then we'll wrap up with the Apple part. They know that hardware, they don't like the thing that, so let's use Meta as an example. Why has Zuck invested so much money in the metaverse and the glasses? He did not want to be beholden to Apple, right? Because he's just an app on Apple. Granted, $1 trillion business app, right? But Apple still controlled the hardware. OpenAI does not want that for the next phase. And listen, man, hardware. The thing I'd say about Lost and all this hype is that so Jony Ive left Apple fully. Left Apple 2019. Had a consulting relationship. It's completely over now. And in the video that he released with Sam Altman, it was clear that he was taking a couple shots at his former employer. And he had a really widely watched interview with a Stripe CEO, Patrick Collison, maybe 2 weeks ago. He actually said that he regretted. He didn't call it the iPhone directly, but he said, "I regret some of the work I previously did. I did not anticipate what social media was going to do to society." So like, you know, it's funny
that
for him
when
to say
Game
that.
left, you know, G Unit, or like, you know, or was he in G Unit? Yeah, when he started making songs.
No,
Was
when
that the right
Game
one?
started
I'm trying to.
beefing, No, when Game started beefing with Tony
With 50
Yayo and
yeah,
G-Unit.
exactly. It's like, I've made a few bangers, but now I'm doing my own thing. You know what I mean?
No, but I love the thing is like I think.
So he
wants,
wasn't part of G Unit. But you get what I'm saying.
No, he was part of the. He was in the circle.
Or like Mace, you know,
Yeah,
like
Mace left that. Well, Bad Boy, that's a whole nother
that's a whole
convo that
different
we're not
thing,
going to
but
open that kind of.
I was
worms
trying to
right
think
now.
of like rap versions. At first, my brain went to like sports, but then I was like, let's do a rap version.
Let's do rap. No, I like
there we
it.
go.
But so Jony Ive clearly wants to do this a screenless product, right? The thing I'd say is this: the like pumping the brakes on the hype train a bit. Dude, hardware is insane. It's absolutely insane, right? And Jony Ive, the thing about his thing, the biggest criticism I saw about this deal was, he hasn't really done anything of consumer scale in the past decade. Steve Jobs and him, what made that relationship work with Steve Jobs is the ultimate editor. People have often described that. Steve Jobs is the greatest tech editor ever. People bring him stuff, and he has the authority to say yes, no, yes, no. Oftentimes he's an asshole about it. But, you know, he earned the right to, in his eyes, obviously, and people work with him to do that. Now, the video, the 9-minute video, the landing page for Johnny and Sam does not suggest to me the type of relationship where Sam Altman can yell at Johnny for doing the wrong thing, right?
Good point.
Right? It does not suggest to me where Sam can come over top and be like, I'm going to impose my taste on this. So that to me is a thing that's obviously a huge difference. Hardware itself is hard. You know what's going to happen? They're going to go try to manufacture. Sam Altman says this will be the fastest consumer hardware product to move 100 million units. Guess what Apple's going to do? Apple's going to go to these manufacturers and just be like, listen, we'll put in an order for 100, 200 million AirPods. Whose business are you going to take? So like OpenAI is going to have a huge issue on just the manufacturing side because the IO team, the startup Jony Ive had, is primarily designers. Design is one. Like Tim Cook, there's a reason he became CEO, and we haven't even done the Tim Cook getting captured by China bit. There's a whole bit on that. And but let's do this. We'll do the Tim Cook AI thing super quickly. So Bloomberg had a Mark Gurman at Bloomberg. He's the AI, he's the Apple whisperer. Got sources everywhere. 6,000 word piece on how Apple fumbled AI. This is very, very relevant here. So I'll give you guys a bit of history and then we can wrap up. Love Bilal's thoughts. So Bilal, I'll actually ask Bilal first. Siri, do you ever use it?
Just to make a phone call to the same number I do every day, aka my parents or my home, and it still messes up.
Wait, what do you do? Siri, call home.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it out loud because it will literally start doing it, and then my mum will be listening in right now.
Yeah.
She'll be getting confused what's going on. But no, I do it for that, and it's really like even yesterday I asked it to add a reminder to my not notes app, like a to-do list app that I use, and it can't do it. Right, and
Fumbled.
It's just like we're in 2025, man. Like it's frustrating. It's like
bro,
it's not working. But yeah, so go ahead.
So you are frustrated by Siri. Would you say that since it was acquired in 2011, it's improved adequately for you?
No, nowhere near.
Right?
Yeah.
No, sorry, it was acquired in 2010. So
Crazy.
the piece, so Gurman's insane, right? They were so far ahead, bro. So Mark Gurman looks at that piece and he's just like, so Steve Jobs typically doesn't get swayed a ton by, because Steve Jobs is a reality distortion field guy. If you try to reality distortion field Steve Jobs, you're like, no.
It's like the Uno reverse. It's like, no, I'm doing this. What are you doing?
Yeah, you're trying to distortion field me. I'm distortioning field you. So apparently, the Siri pitch was one of the only times where he kind of got distortion fielded. After seeing the first Siri pitch, he called the founder of that company 24 days in a row. 24 days in a row. Every day, hammering him until he sold the company to Steve Jobs. I want you to think about that, right? And Steve Jobs obviously died in 2011, so he never got to shepherd Siri. So which is why Bilal, when he's talking about Siri, the criticisms of it, Tim Cook becomes CEO. Nothing happens with Siri. Cook's an operations guy. So to say that Apple has never had interest in AI is wrong, right? They clearly saw the potential. So Siri was the first kind of pitch for their efforts. The next one was a major one. They poached Google's head of AI. Okay, the head of AI at Google. Do you remember? Do you actually remember?
No, because I feel like they all got titles like that.
So his name is John Gianidra. Niandria.
Because I thought the head is the founder of what's it called?
Dima, but you're right. The different company
Thomas or whatever. But
so JG was his nickname within Google and within the tech industry. He was the head of Google's AI. They poached him. Tim Cook poached him in 2018. So people are like, oh, this is huge. JG, though, problems with Apple. Apple has a very specific organization. So Craig Federlini, the head of Apple's software, has the lifer at Apple. So here's the problem that JG had, the guy that they poached. He did not have as much clout within Apple as Craig did, the guy that's been there for decades. So the head of Apple software was basically taking resources. They were battling over resources the past 7 years, right? That's compounded by the fact, by two things. JG didn't have the internal clout at Apple. Number two, he's a very laid-back personality. And Apple's quite cutthroat and quite in your face, and it's very forward and direct. And the third thing that happened was JG, this is to his criticism. He personally did not like chatbots. And when ChatGPT dropped, just balls in your face, right? It's like, it's game over. You just got teabagged. The thing you did not like was the interface that turned OpenAI into an 800 million user thing that it is today. And then that is compounded by two more things I'll add, Bilal. Is the AI unit within Apple also was overly feted, spoiled. So this is hilarious because it's like a corporate joke, but the AI ML unit in Apple, so AI/ML, you just take the first four letters, AI/ML, and then you add ESS. They're known as aimless. So within Atlas, the AI/ML group is called aimless. That's a pretty sick burn, right?
That's jokes, yeah.
The last thing I'll add is this. Apple's CFO, former CFO, was extremely conservative. He did not want to compete with Microsoft, Google, and Meta buying NVIDIA chips. Now, granted, all those companies, particularly Microsoft and Google, they have cloud businesses, right? So it makes sense for them to buy a lot of chips, Microsoft and Google. And then it also makes sense actually for Meta to buy a lot of chips for their ads business. So Apple didn't even buy any chips. They just threw away the opportunity to even get into LLM game. So let me wrap up with this. Fumbled for a lot of reasons I just said, cultural, lack of focus, didn't want to spend the money. The last piece that I'll add is just as a, can they turn it around? I'll just give a shout out to Ben Thompson, at least once a month mentioned here. He had a great piece this morning with John Gruber, also a big Apple observer. He said the most obvious fit to fix this for Apple is what already exists and what's getting broken out with Google. Google famously pays Apple $20 billion a year for distribution Safari. It looks like the US government is ending that relationship, right? But Google's cloud runs their AI, the best model, like Bilal said, the best models across the board. Right now, if you're Apple, you just figure something out. You cut a Godfather deal with Google that is DOJ friendly, antitrust friendly, and you figure out a way where they pay you to be the distribution for their Google.
Or could they also not just do it with OpenAI?
Well, that's the thing. They could be, but I think this Jony Ive thing's a shot across the bow.
Oh,
Like
got you.
that,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, because
right?
now it's getting.
It's like,
but there's
yeah.
also like a frenemy thing there because it
Yeah,
could
exactly.
be like, well, and you could even see incentive for Jony Ive if he's got 2-3% of OpenAI now, which I think is
Right.
what he's got. He could be seeing it like the example that's coming in my head. I can't say out loud, but
Yep.
when
Fair.
you're trying to get your personal take back, like you can take it wherever you want to go in your head. But there's like a thing there with him. I know we got to wrap up. The last question I have for you, Trung, is on Jony Ive specifically and OpenAI. How do you see it playing out? What's your gut feeling saying? Because I'll give mine as well. But curious.
Yeah,
how
if you were to gut feeling me, I suspect I'll be buying whatever product they put out. I do not like the always on. And I know that. I mean, in a lot of ways, our phones are already kind of spying on us, if we're being honest. The geolocation, the times we're using it. There's something quite dystopian about the other thing, but that hasn't stopped me from being on my phone 12 hours a day. The last thing I'll add is this. Let me give some probability. I'll call it 50-50. I think the thing could be a total flop. And the reason I'll say that is this. I think Apple's rolling out glasses. I could see glasses makes more sense as the next thing for me. And I suspect I'm already locked into the Apple ecosystem. I'll probably end up just buying what Apple does with glasses. And I put it that way. Call it 50-50.
That's a fair point. My take really quickly as well is that I hope it works out for them because I mean that would mean that they've created something good and I like good shit. But my gut feeling is saying Jony Ive is a genius at what he does, but within a wider team, specifically with Steve Jobs, I think people may be underestimating how important Steve Jobs' reality distortion field and leadership taking it in a certain ridiculous direction was, and also a moment in time, and the fact that they were, they had a lane that was hard to compete with as well. Whereas in this space, I think it's moving so quickly. I also think it's really difficult to keep having back-to-back bangers. It's like maybe he will, but it's not just on him.
Bro, they had, dude, iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad. It's like, bro, how are you supposed to compete with that?
Yeah, incredible. So like, I wouldn't rule it out, but it's not like, for example, for all the political stuff outside of the political stuff with Elon Musk, if Elon Musk tomorrow said he's starting a new company doing X, I would assume it's gonna work for him, even if you like him, don't like him, whatever. Yeah.
Well, actually, Bilal,
go on.
No,
this
go
is
ahead.
slightly
Give me
different.
last thought. Yeah. It's because he can do full stack. That's
what I mean. He's like the Steve Jobs equivalent here.
Let me throw one prediction for everyone. I think XAI, X, and Tesla will ultimately be wrapped up all together. Tesla will release a hardware AI product. There you go. There you go.
That's
he will release a hardware.
By the way, we should
AI
also
product.
at some point talk about Tesla BYD again because that's been interesting.
EV, 100%.
And then, sorry, the last thing I was going to say on Jony Ive specifically, Trung, is I was just thinking, why are they doing this in the first place? Obviously, it's obvious, like getting talent like that makes sense. But if you just think from Sam Altman's point of view, they're already at like a $300 billion valuation or something like that.
And
like,
they lose money.
Yeah,
hand over fist.
Exactly. And the last round was like 150 to 300, whatever it is. At that scale, there's only a few companies in the world bigger than you. Right? You're already the most important company in this space. And he's already won in it as an individual, essentially. What is there left to do is what you said. It's becoming the Steve Jobs of our time in that area, and he's not fully there yet, but he could. So I think he needs that. Here's partner to do that.
It'll be the first $1 trillion private company. It's happening. OpenAI will be $1 trillion before it goes public.
Before it goes public. There we go. Wrap it up there. Trung, great chat as always. That was a banger. Thanks everyone for being there. Hope you like this. I will say last thing. Please comment on YouTube right now because the Telegram comments aren't perfect for this. So specific for the episode, just go click over to YouTube and write your comment there. People write really great stuff in Telegram, but it's better just we keep it in one place on the episode. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.